Unlock the secret to mastering your mind and emotions with the power of not taking things personally. This audiobook guides you through 10 transformative chapters. Pause before reacting. Separate others' emotions from yours. Assume positive intent. Let go of ego defenses. Choose calm over instant judgment. Observe triggers without engaging. Respond thoughtfully. Practice compassion in tough conversations. Detach from unhelpful opinions and recenter focus on inner truth. Each chapter delivers practical tools to build confidence, clarity, and resilience. Subscribe to Audiobook Tone to gain daily wisdom, actionable insights, and guidance to transform your life with every listen. Number 1. Pause before reacting to criticism. Criticism is a force that can either break us or build us, depending on how we respond. The moment someone criticizes you, whether it's a colleague pointing out a mistake, a friend questioning your choices, or a stranger making a harsh remark, you are faced with a choice. That choice, often made in the first few seconds, determines the quality of your response, the peace of your mind, and the trajectory of your day. Pausing before reacting is not a passive act. It is an active, deliberate practice of self-mastery that separates the impulsive from the wise, the reactive from the resilient. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind strong, and the ground unstable. If you leap without thought, you risk falling. But if you pause, steady your footing, and measure the distance, you create the opportunity to act with precision and safety. Criticism is like that cliff. The first emotional surge, the sting, the defensiveness, the urge to retaliate, is the wind. Pausing allows you to regain balance, to observe the situation clearly, and to decide how to respond from a place of strength rather than impulse. The human brain is wired to react instantly to perceived attacks. Evolutionarily, this was survival, fight, flight, or freeze. When someone criticizes us, our limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, activates almost instantly. Heart rate spikes, muscles tense, and the mind floods with defensiveness. This is natural. It is human. Yet, allowing that first surge of emotion to dictate our response is like handing over the steering wheel to chaos. Pausing interrupts this automatic reaction. It creates a moment of choice, a moment where wisdom can take the driver's seat. Pausing is more than counting to 10 or taking a deep breath. Though these techniques can help, it is a conscious recognition that the criticism is not an emergency, that your immediate emotional reaction is not the truth, and that the situation will not collapse if you wait a moment to respond. This pause creates a buffer between emotion and action, allowing clarity, discernment, and self-control to emerge. The pause is where mastery begins. To pause effectively, start by acknowledging your internal response without judgment. Feel the heat of embarrassment, the surge of anger, or the sting of disappointment. Recognize that these feelings are temporary, waves passing through your consciousness. Label them silently. This is anger. This is discomfort. This is surprise. Naming your emotions diminishes their power and creates a psychological distance from them. Distance breeds clarity. Clarity breeds choice. Choice breeds freedom. Next, consider the source and intent of the criticism. Often, criticism is less about you and more about the other person, their perspective, their expectations, their fears. Asking yourself, what is the intention behind this? Or what can I learn from this? Shifts your focus from personal affront to opportunity for growth. Even harsh criticism contains a kernel of truth that can guide improvement if approached with the right mindset. Pausing gives you the mental space to discern truth from projection, constructive feedback from unnecessary negativity. In practical terms, pausing before reacting can take many forms. Physical pauses, like taking a slow breath or stepping back from a situation, signal to your body that this is not an emergency. Mental pauses, such as silently counting to 5 or repeating a calming phrase, interrupt the automatic fight or flight response. Emotional pauses, like observing your feelings without judgment, prevent them from dictating your words or actions. Each layer of pause, physical, mental, emotional, reinforces the others, creating a holistic shield of self-control. Applying this in daily life requires consistent practice. Start with small moments, a colleague's minor critique, a friend's offhand comment, or a social media remark that triggers irritation. Practice noticing the initial emotional spike, taking a pause, and responding thoughtfully. Over time, the pause becomes instinctive, not forced. It transforms from a technique into a natural expression of inner strength. The benefits are immediate: calmer interactions, fewer regrets, and a growing sense of mastery over yourself, rather than being mastered by others' words. Pausing also enhances communication. When you react immediately, your words may carry unintended anger, defensiveness, or sarcasm. These reactions can escalate conflicts, create misunderstandings, and damage relationships. By pausing, you respond with intention, measured words, and empathy. You become a person whose presence is steady, whose voice carries clarity, and whose responses reflect wisdom rather than impulse. People notice the difference. They feel your calm, and even in disagreement, they respect it. The pause is not merely a buffer for yourself, it is a teaching tool for others. When you refuse to react impulsively, you model emotional intelligence and self-mastery. Others begin to mirror your steadiness. Over time, this creates an environment where thoughtful dialogue replaces reactive conflict, where criticism is discussed rather than endured, and where growth becomes mutual rather than adversarial. Pausing before reacting also cultivates resilience. Life is filled with unavoidable criticism from bosses, peers, family, or society at large. Immediate reactions exhaust energy and often amplify emotional pain. A pause allows you to absorb feedback, assess its value, and respond in alignment with your principles. Each pause strengthens your inner resolve, reinforces your self-respect, and trains your mind to navigate life with composure. It is a muscle that grows stronger with repeated use. Consider the practical example of a work scenario. You receive an email criticizing a report you submitted. The initial impulse might be to fire back defensively or to feel disheartened. Pausing allows you to read the email carefully, separate emotion from content, and decide your response. You might discover valid points to improve your work, while the harsh tone may reflect the sender's stress rather than your inadequacy. By pausing, you prevent unnecessary conflict, learn from the critique, and maintain your dignity. The benefits extend beyond professional settings. In personal relationships, pausing before reacting reduces arguments, fosters understanding, and deepens trust. When a loved one says something hurtful, the instinct may be to retaliate or withdraw. Pausing allows you to listen, interpret their perspective, and respond with empathy and clarity. Over time, relationships strengthen because communication becomes intentional rather than reactive. Pausing before reacting also nurtures self-compassion. Often, criticism triggers self-judgment and negative self-talk. The pause creates an opportunity to treat yourself with kindness, to acknowledge imperfections without shame, and to remind yourself that your worth is not determined by external opinions. This internal dialogue is crucial for mental and emotional well-being, reinforcing resilience and confidence. In essence, pausing before reacting is a practice of freedom. It frees you from the tyranny of impulsive emotions, the chaos of external judgment, and the regrets that follow hasty words. It allows you to reclaim agency in every interaction, transforming criticism from a potential source of suffering into a tool for reflection, learning, and personal growth. Every pause is a victory over instinctive reaction, a step toward mastery of the self. The power of the pause lies not in the act itself, but in what it represents: self-discipline, awareness, and intentional living. It is a daily exercise in choosing response over reaction, thought over impulse, and wisdom over emotion. Each pause strengthens character, deepens understanding, and cultivates a mind that navigates criticism with grace and clarity. In conclusion, pausing before reacting to criticism is not a weakness. It is a profound strength. It is the bridge between emotion and action, the space where insight flourishes, and the discipline that separates reactive individuals from those who lead with wisdom. By mastering the pause, life becomes less about defending yourself against every word, and more about responding with intentionality, integrity, and composure. Every critique becomes an opportunity, every moment of tension a chance to grow, and every pause a testament to the power of self-mastery. It is a simple yet transformative practice, one that reshapes how you experience the world, interact with others, and most importantly, how you master yourself. Number 2. Separate others' emotions from yours. Every day we encounter people whose moods, reactions, and judgments ripple across our lives. A coworker may storm into a meeting frustrated, a friend might lash out in subtle annoyance, or a family member could express disappointment in a tone sharper than necessary. It is easy to absorb these emotions, to feel their weight pressing on your own shoulders, and to allow them to shape your inner state. Yet, the ability to separate your emotions from those of others is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence, personal freedom, and long-term resilience. This practice allows you to live with clarity and purpose, untouched by the turbulence that swirls around you. Human beings are naturally empathetic. We feel the tension in a room, we sense irritation in someone's voice, and we absorb negative energy without realizing it. This ability is useful for connection and understanding, but it becomes dangerous when we conflate another person's emotions with our own. When you react as though someone else's anger is yours to manage, or someone's sadness is your responsibility to fix, you surrender control of your emotional state. You allow external factors, fickle, unpredictable, and often irrelevant to your personal goals, to dictate your mental and emotional stability. The first step in separating others' emotions from your own is awareness. Notice when you are being pulled into someone else's emotional current. Are you feeling anxious because your manager is stressed? Is your irritation rising because a friend is impatient? Recognition is crucial because you cannot disentangle yourself from someone else's emotions if you do not realize you are entangled. Awareness is the lens through which you examine the difference between your feelings and those projected onto you by others. Once you recognize the intrusion, remind yourself that their emotions are theirs alone. Emotions are personal, shaped by past experiences, expectations, and interpretations that have nothing to do with you. When someone is angry, frustrated, or upset, it often reflects their inner world, not your actions or worth. This distinction is subtle but profound. You are not the cause, the container, or the solver of their emotional state. You are a witness. You observe without internalizing, respond without absorbing, and navigate interactions without surrendering your emotional sovereignty. A practical technique to maintain this separation is visualization. Imagine a protective boundary surrounding you, a clear division between your energy and the emotional energy of others. See their emotions bouncing off this boundary instead of infiltrating your mind. Visualizing emotional boundaries reinforces mental detachment and cultivates a habit of non-absorption. Over time, this mental exercise becomes instinctive. You feel the presence of strong emotions without carrying their weight, allowing calm, rational thinking to guide your responses. Language also plays a pivotal role. Internally, you can reframe interactions by labeling emotions accurately. Instead of thinking, "I am stressed because my colleague is angry," shift to, "My colleague is expressing anger. I am calm and separate from this emotion." This subtle adjustment in phrasing reinforces separation and reduces the tendency to mirror negative states. Words shape perception, and perception shapes experience. When you consistently distinguish your emotional state from others, you build resilience, focus, and emotional independence. Observation without judgment is another powerful tool. When someone expresses strong emotions, whether positive or negative, watch them as if you are an impartial observer. Notice their tone, gestures, and expressions without assigning blame or interpreting them as personal attacks. By observing instead of reacting, you avoid being swept into the emotional tide. This approach does not mean you ignore others. It means you engage without merging your identity with their feelings. You can respond with empathy and kindness, without being consumed by the emotional drama that is not yours to carry. There are moments when this separation requires intentional physical and mental action. If a conversation becomes emotionally charged, taking a brief pause or stepping away can prevent automatic absorption of negative energy. A short walk, deep breathing, or a moment of reflection allows the mind to reset, preserving the distinction between your emotional state and that of others. Such practices reinforce your internal control, making it easier to respond with wisdom rather than reaction. The ability to separate emotions is especially critical in leadership and teamwork. Leaders who internalize their team's frustrations risk burnout, poor decision-making, and impaired judgment. By maintaining emotional separation, leaders can address issues objectively, provide guidance without bias, and cultivate a stable environment where others feel understood but not judged. Similarly, in personal relationships, detaching from the emotional volatility of friends or family allows interactions to remain constructive, preventing conflicts from escalating unnecessarily. Emotional separation does not imply indifference or coldness. True separation is grounded in compassion and understanding. You can acknowledge someone's pain, anger, or disappointment, and offer support or guidance without making it your burden. Compassion becomes more authentic when it is offered from a place of emotional autonomy rather than a reactionary state. By preserving your emotional integrity, you become a more effective friend, partner, colleague, or leader. Your support carries strength instead of being weakened by unconscious absorption of stress. This practice also transforms self-talk and inner dialogue. When exposed to someone else's negativity, the internal monologue often shifts toward defensiveness, self-doubt, or anxiety. Separating emotions allows you to intercept these thought patterns before they escalate. You can remind yourself, their frustration is theirs. I am not responsible for it. I choose how I feel and act. Over time, these affirmations strengthen emotional resilience and reinforce the separation between your inner life and external disturbances. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice this discipline. Begin with small, everyday situations: the impatient driver in traffic, a cashier's curt tone, a coworker's critique. Observe the emotional surge you feel in response. Then consciously step back. Label the emotion as belonging to the other person. Reinforce your calm, rational self. Respond as appropriate without absorbing the negativity. Repetition builds habit. Habit builds mastery. Mastery builds freedom from the unpredictable tides of other people's emotional states. Separating your emotions from those of others also encourages better decision-making. When you are free from the distortions caused by another person's anxiety, anger, or excitement, your choices are guided by rational assessment and your own values. Impulsive reactions give way to deliberate action. You avoid unnecessary conflict, reduce stress, and create space for constructive solutions. Emotional clarity is not a luxury. It is a tool for success in every sphere of life. The long-term benefits of maintaining emotional separation are profound. You cultivate inner peace, clarity of thought, and stability regardless of external chaos. Stress levels decrease because you are no longer burdened by emotions that do not belong to you. Relationships improve because your responses are measured, intentional, and grounded in awareness rather than reactivity. Personal growth accelerates as energy previously lost to absorption of others' emotions is redirected toward meaningful action, learning, and self-improvement. Ultimately, separating others' emotions from your own is a declaration of autonomy. It is an assertion that your inner state is yours to govern, not a reflection of every external stimulus. By observing, understanding, and maintaining boundaries, you reclaim your energy, protect your mental and emotional well-being, and engage with the world from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. Emotional separation is not avoidance. It is mastery, clarity, and intentional living in its purest form. The moment you consistently practice this, life changes. You respond to negativity without being dragged into it. You experience the highs and lows of others without losing your own equilibrium. You can support, guide, and influence others without compromising your inner peace. Every encounter becomes an opportunity to exercise discipline, wisdom, and self-mastery. By separating your emotions from those of others, you walk through life with freedom, composure, and the ability to act with purpose in every situation, no longer a passive reactor, but a conscious, intentional participant. Number 3. Assume positive intent every time. Life presents endless situations where the actions of others can be interpreted in ways that provoke anger, frustration, or resentment. A colleague misses a deadline, a friend forgets a commitment, or a stranger speaks sharply in passing. The default tendency for many people is to assume the worst. They were careless, inconsiderate, or intentionally disrespectful. This instinct may have roots in survival, a subconscious drive to protect oneself from harm or disappointment. Yet assuming negative intent is a subtle thief of peace, a silent architect of unnecessary conflict, and a relentless source of internal tension. The practice of assuming positive intent transforms not only how you perceive others, but also how you experience life. It is a conscious choice that cultivates patience, understanding, and emotional freedom. Assuming positive intent is not naive or blind optimism. It does not ignore mistakes, miscommunication, or genuine wrongdoing. Rather, it is a disciplined lens through which you view the world, a framework that prioritizes understanding over judgment. When someone acts in a way that could be interpreted as hurtful, assuming positive intent allows you to pause and consider alternative explanations. Perhaps they are under stress, distracted, or unaware of how their actions affect others. This mental shift prevents automatic defensiveness, protects relationships, and creates space for thoughtful response instead of reaction. The moment you begin practicing positive intent, you notice a shift in your internal dialogue. Instead of immediately reacting with irritation or suspicion, you ask, what if their actions were meant to help rather than harm? Or could there be a reason I'm not aware of for this behavior? These questions do not suppress your awareness or dismiss reality. They expand your perspective and redirect energy from judgment to understanding. Your mind moves from reactive assumptions to curious inquiry, a shift that fosters calm and rational thinking. In daily interactions, assuming positive intent changes the tone of communication. When someone speaks sharply or criticizes, your first interpretation is not that they are attacking you personally. Instead, you view their words as a reflection of their perspective, circumstances, or stress. This approach diffuses emotional tension, allowing you to respond with clarity and composure. Conversations that might have escalated into conflict instead become opportunities for collaboration, problem solving, and mutual respect. To practice positive intent consistently, begin with small, controllable situations. When someone cuts you off in traffic, do not assume malice. Perhaps they are rushing to an emergency, or perhaps their attention lapsed momentarily. In professional settings, if a coworker is curt or impatient, consider that they might be facing pressures unrelated to you. By attributing neutral or positive reasons rather than negative ones, you reduce unnecessary emotional turmoil and maintain your focus on what truly matters. A critical component of this practice is self-awareness. Notice when your mind leaps to negative assumptions and gently redirect it. Train yourself to observe thoughts without immediately accepting them as true. Often the assumption that someone intended harm is automatic, a knee-jerk reaction to perceived threat. By catching this impulse early, you interrupt the cycle of misinterpretation and emotional escalation. The more consistently you do this, the more intuitive it becomes, until assuming positive intent becomes your default mode of perception. Assuming positive intent also enhances empathy. When you consider that someone's actions are not meant to hurt, your capacity to understand their perspective grows. You recognize that every individual navigates challenges, stressors, and limitations, and that their behavior may be shaped by circumstances you cannot see. This recognition does not excuse poor behavior but allows you to engage with others from a place of compassion rather than judgment. Empathy grounded in positive intent fosters stronger relationships, mutual respect, and meaningful connections. This practice has profound effects on leadership and teamwork. Leaders who assume positive intent in their teams avoid unnecessary conflict, create trust, and encourage collaboration. Employees who feel that their mistakes are understood rather than immediately condemned are more willing to take initiative and learn from errors. Teams become environments of growth and resilience rather than fear and defensiveness. The mindset of positive intent is contagious. When leaders model it consistently, it shapes the culture of the entire organization, making communication more constructive and engagement more authentic. Positive intent also safeguards mental health. Habitually assuming the worst in others fosters anxiety, resentment, and chronic stress. The mind becomes a battleground, constantly interpreting neutral events as threats or attacks. By shifting to positive intent, you reduce these internal battles. You approach life with curiosity rather than suspicion, with openness rather than defensiveness. This shift decreases tension, improves emotional resilience, and allows for a greater sense of peace and stability, even in situations that are imperfect or challenging. The practice of positive intent does not negate accountability. When someone acts irresponsibly or harms others, their actions still require attention and appropriate response. So assuming positive intent is about mindset, not permissive. It allows you to address issues constructively rather than reactively. You engage with the facts and circumstances rather than being clouded by assumptions of malice. This approach leads to clearer communication, more effective problem solving, and stronger outcomes in both personal and professional contexts. Daily application of positive intent requires consistency and reflection. Begin each day by reminding yourself that others' actions are not necessarily personal attacks. When conflicts arise, pause and consider alternative explanations before reacting. After interactions, reflect on situations where assuming positive intent changed your experience. Over time, these reflections reinforce the habit, transforming your default approach to the world and the people around you. Assuming positive intent also builds inner strength. When you no longer react automatically to perceived slights, you reclaim control over your emotional state. You are less likely to be manipulated by others' moods or behaviors. The energy that was previously spent on defensiveness or resentment is redirected toward meaningful action, personal growth, and purposeful engagement. By assuming positive intent, you create a mental environment where focus, productivity, and positivity can flourish, unhindered by unnecessary conflict or negativity. In personal relationships, positive intent nurtures trust and harmony. Partners, friends, and family members are more likely to communicate openly when they feel understood rather than judged. Misunderstandings are resolved more quickly, arguments de-escalate, and empathy becomes a natural part of interactions. Assuming positive intent is a practice of generosity of mind. It allows you to extend grace without sacrificing self-respect, to build connection without losing discernment, and to engage without absorbing unnecessary negativity. Ultimately, assuming positive intent every time is a transformative discipline. It shifts the way you experience the world from suspicion to curiosity, from reaction to understanding, from conflict to collaboration. It is a conscious choice that fosters resilience, emotional intelligence, and deep human connection. By assuming positive intent, you create a mental framework where challenges are met with clarity, others' actions are viewed through a lens of understanding, and your own responses are grounded in wisdom rather than impulse. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional when this principle is applied consistently. You navigate difficult situations with grace, interact with others with empathy, and maintain peace of mind regardless of external circumstances. Assuming positive intent is not about ignoring reality. It is about choosing perspective, cultivating patience, and operating from a place of strength. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to reinforce this mindset, to practice compassion, and to act from clarity rather than emotion. The practice requires patience and repetition, but the results are profound. Peace replaces irritation, understanding replaces judgment, and connection replaces conflict. By assuming positive intent every time, you experience life with greater calm, emotional resilience, and inner freedom. You become a person whose responses are thoughtful, whose actions are deliberate, and whose mind is liberated from the weight of negativity that comes from assuming the worst. This discipline reshapes how you perceive others, interact with the world, and govern your own emotional state, creating a foundation for personal growth, meaningful relationships, and enduring inner strength. Number 4. Let go of ego defenses. The ego is a remarkable instrument, yet it is often the source of unnecessary suffering. It constantly seeks validation, protection, and superiority, constructing walls around the self to shield from perceived threats. These defenses arise in subtle ways: a defensive reply to criticism, a rush to justify choices, a need to assert dominance in conversation. While the ego may feel necessary to preserve identity, it often distorts reality, prevents genuine connection, and magnifies conflict. Letting go of ego defenses is not surrendering self-respect or abandoning principles. It is an intentional act of strength, a decision to respond with clarity, rather than instinctive self-protection. Ego defenses are activated whenever there is a perceived attack, judgment, or challenge to self-image. When someone points out a mistake, expresses disagreement, or questions your approach, the ego reacts as though the core of your being is threatened. This reaction manifests as defensiveness, anger, or dismissiveness. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward liberation. Observing when the ego rises without immediately engaging it creates the possibility to respond differently. Awareness interrupts automatic defense mechanisms, allowing reflection and deliberate choice to take their place. One practical way to release ego defenses is to embrace humility in daily interactions. Humility does not imply weakness. It signifies the confidence to acknowledge limitations, accept feedback, and engage openly without the need for constant validation. When someone offers critique, consciously separate the content from your self-worth. Focus on what can be learned rather than on how your image is affected. This subtle shift reduces internal friction, enabling growth and enhancing relationships. Over time, humility diminishes the compulsive need to defend, replacing reactivity with thoughtful engagement. Self-reflection plays a pivotal role in letting go of ego defenses. Take time to examine why certain remarks, actions, or situations trigger a defensive response. Often, these triggers are tied to past experiences, insecurities, or societal conditioning rather than the present moment. By understanding the source of your defensiveness, you gain control over it. The mind begins to perceive challenges as opportunities for insight rather than threats to identity. This transformation creates a foundation for resilience, emotional stability, and self-mastery. Another effective approach is practicing restraint in verbal and nonverbal reactions. Pause before responding to comments that might provoke ego-driven replies. Observe your impulses, but do not act on them immediately. A measured response prevents escalation and preserves dignity while communicating confidence and self-control. This pause also creates space to evaluate whether engagement is necessary or whether silence and composure better serve the situation. Acting from discernment rather than defense signals mastery over self, rather than submission to circumstance. Ego defenses also dissolve when you focus on shared human experience, rather than individual superiority. Recognize that everyone is navigating struggles, insecurities, and pressures. Criticism, confrontation, or differing opinions are often reflections of others' realities rather than personal attacks. By maintaining this perspective, you reduce the instinct to retaliate or justify, replacing it with curiosity and understanding. Seeing interactions as collaborative rather than combative fosters connection, reduces tension, and enhances the quality of relationships. Practical exercises can strengthen the ability to release ego defenses. One method is journaling reactions to challenging interactions. Note the moments when defensiveness arose, explore the emotions tied to them, and consider alternative responses rooted in composure and understanding. Reflecting on patterns reveals opportunities for conscious change and gradually retrains habitual responses. Another exercise involves deliberate exposure to constructive criticism. Seek feedback in controlled environments, listen attentively, and practice responding without defensiveness. Over time, the ego's automatic protective mechanisms weaken, replaced by thoughtful engagement. Letting go of ego defenses also requires acceptance of imperfection. Life is inherently unpredictable, and mistakes, misunderstandings, and disagreements are unavoidable. Resisting these realities triggers defensive reactions. Embracing them cultivates peace and clarity. Accepting imperfection does not equate to resignation, but to realistic engagement with life. When you release the need to constantly defend your image, energy shifts from resistance toward effective problem-solving, learning, and authentic communication. This practice has profound implications for personal and professional life. In leadership, letting go of ego defenses enables collaboration, openness, and credibility. Leaders who respond without defensiveness create environments where feedback is valued, creativity is encouraged, and trust flourishes. In personal relationships, releasing ego defenses fosters understanding, patience, and deeper connection. Conversations become constructive, conflicts diminish, and interactions gain authenticity. The absence of ego-driven resistance allows space for empathy, negotiation, and mutual growth. Another layer of releasing ego defenses is embracing vulnerability. Acknowledging uncertainty, expressing genuine feelings, and admitting errors without fear of judgment diminishes the ego's influence. Vulnerability requires courage because it challenges the instinct to protect one's image, but it builds authenticity and resilience. When practiced consistently, vulnerability strengthens self-confidence and cultivates trust in others, replacing fear and defensiveness with connection and mutual respect. Mindfulness enhances this process. Observing thoughts and emotions as they arise, without attaching identity or judgment, reduces the ego's grip. Notice when pride, resentment, or indignation surface, and label them objective. Recognize these reactions as transient mental events rather than truths about your worth or capability. By consistently practicing mindfulness, you develop the capacity to act with intentionality, choosing responses aligned with wisdom rather than habitual ego defense. Energy management is another critical aspect. Defensiveness consumes mental and emotional resources that could otherwise be directed toward meaningful pursuits. Every defensive reaction drains focus, attention, and creativity. By letting go of ego defenses, energy is conserved and redirected toward productivity, problem-solving, and personal growth. This liberation enhances performance, satisfaction, and the capacity to engage with life on your terms. An important dimension of releasing ego defenses is empathy. When you understand that others' words or actions may stem from fear, pressure, or misunderstanding, your instinct to defend diminishes. Responding with empathy rather than defensiveness transforms conflict into dialogue and tension into collaboration. Empathy does not compromise your boundaries, but strengthens your ability to navigate challenges without reactive hostility. It turns potentially confrontational encounters into opportunities for insight, reconciliation, and mutual benefit. The journey of letting go of ego defenses is continuous. Each day presents situations that test the ego: criticism, competition, differing opinions, and unexpected challenges. Repeated practice builds resilience and mastery. Over time, defensive reactions diminish, replaced by deliberate responses rooted in awareness, self-assurance, and clarity. Life becomes less about preserving an image and more about engaging meaningfully, learning consistently, and connecting authentically. Ultimately, releasing ego defenses is an act of liberation. It frees the mind from the tyranny of self-protection, reduces internal conflict, and enhances emotional and mental stability. You gain the freedom to listen without judgment, respond without fear, and engage without compulsion. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice strength, wisdom, and composure. Letting go of ego defenses allows life to be experienced with clarity, purpose, and authenticity. It is not surrender but mastery, a path towards self-discipline, resilience, and profound inner peace. By embracing this principle, the world ceases to be a battlefield for the ego and transforms into a landscape for growth, learning, and meaningful engagement. Responses become intentional, energy is preserved, and relationships flourish. Challenges are met with clarity rather than resistance, and life is navigated with a sense of calm authority. Letting go of ego defenses is the gateway to self-mastery, offering the ability to act with courage, wisdom, and authenticity in every moment. Number 5. Choose calm over instant judgment. Every day, life presents situations that test patience, understanding, and emotional composure. A friend might say something that feels cutting, a coworker could challenge your ideas, or a stranger may act in ways that seem inconsiderate. The instinctive reaction in these moments is often immediate judgment, labeling someone as rude, careless, or wrong. This automatic response is rooted in survival instincts, a mental shortcut designed to assess threats quickly. Yet, while it may have served in primitive contexts, instant judgment in modern life frequently distorts reality, generates conflict, and undermines clarity. Choosing calm over rapid evaluation is not about suppressing awareness or ignoring reality. It is a conscious decision to prioritize reason, perspective, and emotional balance over impulsive opinion. The first step toward cultivating calm is recognizing how fast judgments arise. They are often instantaneous, triggered before the conscious mind fully processes the situation. Awareness of this tendency allows a person to pause, creating a brief but powerful window to choose how to respond. During this pause, the mind can assess facts, context, and intentions, rather than reacting based solely on emotion or assumption. This small interval between stimulus and response is where control is regained, transforming reflexive judgments into deliberate, thoughtful evaluation. Calmness requires anchoring in self-awareness. Emotional reactions are amplified when the mind interprets a situation as personal or threatening. By stepping back mentally, you acknowledge that external events do not dictate internal peace. The storm outside need not disturb the clarity within. Viewing challenging interactions through the lens of observation rather than personal attack diffuses tension and provides the clarity necessary for rational decision-making. The capacity to remain centered is cultivated over time through conscious repetition, a mental muscle strengthened each time you choose reflection over immediate critique. One practical method to maintain calm is controlled breathing. The body and mind are closely linked, and rapid emotional reactions often manifest physiologically: tense muscles, shallow breathing, racing heartbeats. By intentionally taking slow, deep breaths, the body signals to the brain that there is no immediate danger. This physiological cue dampens the fight-or-flight response, creating a foundation for thoughtful assessment rather than impulsive judgment. Breathing anchors the mind in the present moment, preventing assumptions from escalating into emotional turmoil. Choosing calm also involves examining assumptions before forming opinions. A remark that initially feels harsh may be misinterpreted, incomplete, or reflective of circumstances unknown to you. Asking internally, "Is there another explanation, or could there be context I'm missing?" opens the door to understanding rather than condemnation. This practice shifts the perspective from adversarial to inquisitive, fostering empathy and reducing unnecessary friction. Over time, consistently questioning assumptions cultivates discernment, a sharper ability to distinguish reality from perception. Calmness enhances communication. When responses are measured rather than immediate, words carry clarity, intentionality, and respect. Reactions fueled by judgment tend to escalate conflicts, alienate others, and close pathways for dialogue. In contrast, calm responses create space for discussion, encourage problem-solving, and preserve relationships. People naturally respond better to composure, trust measured voices, and mirror the steadiness they encounter. By choosing calm, you influence the tone of interactions and guide outcomes toward resolution rather than escalation. Mindset is central to this practice. Viewing challenges as opportunities to exercise patience and wisdom transforms potentially reactive scenarios into deliberate exercises in self-mastery. Each moment where judgment could arise becomes a test of discipline, a chance to strengthen resilience and enhance emotional intelligence. By framing situations this way, the act of choosing calm gains purpose, turning daily encounters into training grounds for character development and mental fortitude. An additional strategy is delayed response. When confronted with criticism, disagreement, or emotionally charged statements, resist the impulse to respond immediately. Silence is not weakness. It is a tool for clarity. Taking even a few moments to process allows the mind to filter out impulsive reactions and prioritize responses that align with principles and long-term goals. This approach fosters composure, prevents unnecessary conflict, and demonstrates self-control, signaling maturity and wisdom in handling challenging situations. Practicing calm over judgment is transformative in professional contexts. Work environments often demand rapid reactions, where misunderstandings, stress, and competing priorities create tension. Immediate judgments about colleagues, decisions, or outcomes can exacerbate conflicts, reduce collaboration, and compromise productivity. Choosing calm ensures assessments are based on facts and context, rather than emotion. Leaders who model this behavior cultivate a culture of reflection, trust, and effective communication, empowering teams to perform at their best without unnecessary friction. In personal relationships, this practice nurtures patience and understanding. Partners, friends, and family members are prone to mistakes, lapses in communication, or expressions of frustration. Immediate judgment can create defensiveness and resentment. Responding with calm promotes empathy and dialogue, allowing interactions to remain constructive. Calmness allows observation of behavior without attaching it to assumptions about character or intent, fostering connection rather than conflict. Over time, relationships benefit from consistent steadiness, reducing emotional turbulence and enhancing mutual respect. The inner transformation achieved through this discipline is profound. Constant judgment consumes energy, generates stress, and distorts perception. By choosing calm, energy is conserved and redirected toward meaningful engagement, problem-solving, and reflection. Mental clarity improves because attention is not diverted by reactive thoughts. Emotional resilience grows because peace is maintained even amid external unpredictability. This internal stability becomes a foundation for intentional living, allowing focus on what truly matters rather than being swayed by every perceived slight or irritation. Choosing calm requires reframing the purpose of judgment itself. Instead of evaluating others as a reflex, use discernment intentionally to guide decisions and actions. Recognize when judgment is constructive, such as assessing safety, ethics, or practical outcomes, and when it is a reaction driven by ego, fear, or misunderstanding. By consciously selecting the moments and manner in which evaluations occur, judgment becomes a tool of wisdom rather than a source of stress or conflict. The cultivation of calm over instant judgment also strengthens self-awareness. Observing the triggers that provoke judgment highlights personal insecurities, biases, or assumptions. Reflection on these triggers allows for adjustment of perception, reducing susceptibility to unnecessary agitation. Over time, you develop the ability to engage with the world from a place of clarity and perspective, responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. This self-mastery is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence and sustainable personal growth. Ultimately, choosing calm over instant judgment is an act of empowerment. It asserts control over the mind, protects peace of thought, and enhances clarity of perception. It transforms challenging interactions into opportunities for reflection, insight, and growth. Calmness allows reasoning to prevail over impulsivity, intentionality to guide action, and understanding to replace misinterpretation. Each decision to pause, breathe, and consider before judging reinforces inner strength, fortifies relationships, and cultivates resilience in the face of life's unpredictability. The practice, once habitual, reshapes perception of the world. Situations that once triggered irritation, offense, or emotional turbulence are met with composure and discernment. Energy is conserved for meaningful pursuits, interactions are guided by clarity, and responses are informed by wisdom rather than impulse. Choosing calm over instant judgment is a daily exercise in self-mastery, an act of resilience, and a gateway to peace, understanding, and purposeful living. Through consistent application, life becomes less about reacting to external provocations and more about responding with thoughtful precision, emotional balance, and intentionality. Number 6. Observe triggers without engaging them. Life is filled with moments that test patience, composure, and emotional resilience. Certain words, gestures, or events can spark strong reactions almost instantly, sending the mind and body into heightened alertness. A sharp tone, an unexpected critique, or a sudden inconvenience may trigger discomfort, irritation, or even anger. These triggers are deeply personal. They arise from past experiences, beliefs, or insecurities. They are unavoidable, but the way you interact with them is entirely within your control. Observing triggers without engaging them is a practice that cultivates inner calm, clarity of mind, and emotional mastery. It allows the mind to witness its reactions without becoming enslaved by them. The first step is awareness. Recognize when a trigger arises. It often starts subtly, a tightening of the chest, a sudden heat in the face, a surge of tension in the shoulders. These physical sensations are early warning signs that the mind is interpreting an event as significant or threatening. Awareness transforms these signals into tools rather than hazards. By noticing triggers as they appear, you create the opportunity to act consciously rather than react automatically. This small pause between stimulus and response is the gateway to mastery over the mind. Observing a trigger does not mean suppressing it. It does not require pretending you feel nothing or denying the sensations within. Instead, it means watching the emotional wave rise and pass without allowing it to dictate behavior. Imagine standing on a riverbank, watching the current rush by. The water flows with energy and force, but standing on the bank keeps you grounded and separate. Similarly, noticing triggers allows you to experience their presence without being swept away by impulsive reactions. You witness the emotion without absorbing its power. Language is a powerful tool for reinforcing observation. Mentally labeling your experience, this is irritation, this is frustration, creates a separation between observer and emotion. The simple act of naming diminishes its intensity and prevents it from becoming a command that demands immediate action. It transforms chaotic energy into an object of awareness. Over time, this practice rewires the mind, making it instinctive to observe rather than automatically engage. Each observation strengthens the ability to navigate life with composure. Breathing techniques complement this practice. When a trigger arises, taking slow, intentional breaths anchors the body and calms the nervous system. Physical tension often fuels emotional escalation, and conscious breathing interrupts this cycle. It signals to the brain that there is no immediate threat, enabling rational thought and measured response. The breath becomes a bridge between awareness of the trigger and the decision to act or not act consciously. Understanding the source of triggers enhances observation. Most reactions are shaped by past experiences, cultural conditioning, or personal insecurities. For instance, being criticized might provoke intense defensiveness, not because of the critique itself, but because it echoes earlier experiences of rejection. Recognizing this allows you to distinguish the present reality from historical pattern. You respond to the current moment with clarity, rather than being hijacked by the ghosts of previous encounters. Observation transforms triggers into mirrors for self-understanding, rather than weapons of emotional disruption. Practical application begins in small, everyday scenarios. When someone interrupts you, notice the surge of irritation or impatience without immediately responding. When traffic delays provoke frustration, acknowledge the emotion without lashing out or internalizing negativity. By repeatedly practicing observation in minor incidents, the mind strengthens its capacity to remain grounded in more challenging situations. The principle is consistent. Feel the emotion, identify it, and maintain the choice not to engage impulsively. Observation also improves relationships. Many conflicts arise because one person reacts instantly to perceived slights or misunderstandings. When triggers are noticed without engagement, responses become deliberate and constructive. Conversations remain calm, communication is clearer, and misunderstandings are less likely to escalate. People around you experience steadiness rather than reactivity, creating an environment of trust and stability. This approach fosters empathy as well because witnessing your own triggers sharpens sensitivity to the triggers of others. Emotional intelligence grows when observation is habitual. Each time a trigger is noted without engagement, the mind learns to separate emotion from action. Patterns become visible. Certain phrases, behaviors, or situations consistently provoke responses. Awareness of these patterns allows proactive management rather than reactive surrender. You gain the ability to navigate relationships, work environments, and daily life with precision, responding strategically instead of reacting reflexively. Observation without engagement also strengthens resilience. Life is unpredictable, and external events cannot be fully controlled. By training the mind to witness triggers rather than react to them, emotional turbulence diminishes, stress levels decrease, focus improves, and decision-making is enhanced. You become less susceptible to manipulation, drama, or unnecessary conflict because responses are filtered through calm observation rather than emotional impulse. Another key aspect is detachment. Observing a trigger requires recognizing that the emotion is temporary and external to your core self. It is an event passing through consciousness, not a permanent state. This perspective cultivates equanimity, allowing you to navigate intense experiences without losing balance. The mind learns to distinguish between sensation and reality, between perception and truth, reinforcing inner stability. Mindfulness practices enhance this skill. Meditation, reflective journaling, or quiet contemplation provide structured opportunities to observe thoughts and emotions without engagement. These exercises train the mind to notice subtle shifts in perception, increasing awareness of triggers before they escalate. With consistent practice, mindfulness becomes a natural part of daily life, enabling observation in the midst of chaos and maintaining calm amid challenges. Letting go of the need to act immediately is critical. Many triggers evoke a strong urge to respond, defend, argue, explain, or retaliate. Observation without engagement requires patience and the understanding that not every stimulus demands a reaction. This restraint preserves energy, prevents unnecessary conflict, and allows time to choose responses aligned with long-term values rather than short-term impulses. Each instance of self-restraint strengthens discipline and mental clarity. Observation also enhances self-compassion, recognizing triggers as natural responses rather than moral failings reduces self-criticism. Instead of judging oneself for reacting, you learn to witness reactions as information clues to personal growth, areas of sensitivity, and opportunities for improvement. This practice builds emotional resilience, empowering you to navigate difficult situations without guilt or shame. The benefits extend to professional life as well. Meetings, negotiations, and collaborative projects often involve stress, conflicting opinions, and emotionally charged interactions. Observing triggers without engagement allows you to remain focused, communicate effectively, and make strategic decisions. Colleagues perceive steadiness and reliability, enhancing credibility and influence. The capacity to maintain composure under pressure becomes a competitive advantage, improving outcomes and fostering trust. Ultimately, observing triggers without engaging them is a practice of freedom. It frees the mind from impulsive reactions, protects emotional energy, and strengthens personal agency. It transforms experiences that previously caused disruption into opportunities for reflection, understanding, and mastery. Each moment of observation builds awareness, cultivates patience, and reinforces the ability to navigate life with composure. The mind gradually rewires itself through consistent practice. What once triggered chaos now becomes a signal to pause, breathe, and assess. Emotional responses become data rather than commands. Relationships improve, decisions become more thoughtful, and inner peace strengthens. By observing triggers without engagement, life becomes less about reaction and more about deliberate, intentional response, fostering resilience, wisdom, and freedom in every circumstance. Number 7. Respond thoughtfully, not emotionally. Life presents countless opportunities where instinct drives response before thought can intervene. A harsh word, an unexpected criticism, a sudden disappointment. These moments ignite immediate emotional reactions. The mind surges with impulses, defensiveness, anger, fear, or frustration. Reacting in this way is natural, but habitual emotional response comes at a cost. It clouds judgment, strains relationships, and often leads to regret. Responding thoughtfully instead of emotionally is a conscious discipline that transforms how interactions unfold, how decisions are made, and how personal energy is preserved. It is not denial of feeling, it is mastery of action, allowing insight and principle to guide behavior. Thoughtful responses require a pause between stimulus and reaction. The moment an emotional impulse arises, recognize it without surrendering to it. The mind and body provide clear signals, tightening of muscles, racing heartbeat, elevated tensions. Observing these signals allows awareness to intervene. This pause is not hesitation. It is an intentional space in which emotion can be acknowledged, understood, and channeled productively. Within this interval lies the capacity to act with purpose, preserving dignity and clarity in the face of provocation. Self-awareness underpins every thoughtful response. Understanding personal triggers, sensitivities, and habitual reactions is critical. For instance, a critique may provoke defensiveness not because of its content, but because it touches a personal insecurity. Awareness of such tendencies allows deliberate management, preventing reflexive reactions from dictating behavior. The mind becomes a controlled instrument, capable of choosing deliberate action instead of surrendering to transient impulses. Language shapes responses profoundly. Thoughtful communication begins internally. Replace automatic reactive thoughts with measured reflection. Ask, what outcome do I want? What is the most effective way to communicate this perspective? Formulating words internally before speaking channels emotion into clarity, reducing misinterpretation and unnecessary conflict. A deliberate choice of tone, phrasing, and timing can transform what might have been a heated exchange into a constructive dialogue. Listening deeply is a core element of responding thoughtfully. Emotional reactions often arise from misinterpretation or assumption. By concentrating fully on what another person communicates, both verbally and non-verbally, you gather accurate information. Attention to tone, intention, and context prevents emotional distortion from shaping your response. Thoughtful listening transforms interactions, allowing understanding and empathy to guide action rather than impulsive judgment or defensive reflex. Practical techniques enhance this discipline. Breathing exercises, for instance, anchor attention and calm physiological responses. Slow, deliberate inhalation and exhalation reduce the intensity of emotional impulses, providing a foundation for rational decision-making. Visualization of a controlled, composed self can also prepare the mind to respond with clarity in real-time situations. Mental rehearsal strengthens the ability to maintain calm and act with integrity, even in high-pressure circumstances. Perspective-taking is another essential skill. Responding thoughtfully involves considering multiple angles, the speaker's circumstances, potential miscommunications, and broader consequences. This practice shifts focus from personal offense to constructive assessment. What initially seems provocative may stem from misunderstanding, stress, or external pressures unrelated to you. Thoughtful response requires integrating these perspectives, creating space for solutions, compromise, and collaboration rather than conflict. Thoughtful response is grounded in values. Knowing your principles, priorities, and long-term objectives informs how you engage in each situation. When confronted with criticism or challenge, your response is guided not by transient emotion, but by your sense of integrity. Decisions made with this framework maintain consistency, strengthen character, and foster trust among peers, colleagues, and loved ones. Emotional impulses are transient, principles endure, and responses aligned with them reinforce identity rather than undermine it. Empathy amplifies the effectiveness of thoughtful responses. Recognizing that others act from their perspectives, limitations, and experiences reduces reactive impulses. Responding from understanding, rather than irritation, transforms tension into dialogue. Empathy allows engagement without submission to emotional provocation, bridging gaps in communication and fostering cooperative resolution. Interactions guided by compassion and insight produce better outcomes for all parties involved. Daily life provides numerous opportunities to practice this skill. Conversations at work, disagreements with friends, or unexpected events in public spaces can trigger strong reactions. Each instance becomes a training ground. Observe the initial emotional surge, acknowledge it, and consciously formulate a response rooted in clarity and principle. This repetition strengthens neural pathways, making thoughtful response habitual rather than forced. Over time, the mind defaults to deliberation, and emotional volatility diminishes. Responding thoughtfully is also an investment in self-preservation. Emotional reactions consume energy, cloud judgment, and exacerbate stress. Thoughtful responses conserve mental and emotional resources, allowing energy to be directed toward meaningful action. By responding with deliberation, you avoid unnecessary escalation, preserve relationships, and maintain personal equilibrium, even amid challenging circumstances. In professional environments, thoughtful response enhances credibility and effectiveness. Colleagues recognize calm, measured reactions as indicators of reliability and leadership. In conflict resolution, decisions made with reflection rather than emotion are more strategic, equitable, and sustainable. A composed response fosters trust and respect, encouraging collaboration and reducing workplace tension. The ability to respond thoughtfully differentiates those who navigate complexity with skill from those overwhelmed by impulse. Personal relationships benefit similarly. Emotional reactivity often magnifies misunderstandings, fosters resentment, and creates cycles of conflict. Choosing thoughtful responses breaks this cycle. Engaging intentionally with attention and respect strengthens bonds, promotes constructive dialogue, and nurtures mutual understanding. The ability to respond thoughtfully signals emotional intelligence, reliability, and commitment to relationship health. Thoughtful response also cultivates clarity and decision-making. When the mind is free from reactive impulses, options are assessed objectively. Risks, benefits, and consequences are weighed without distortion by transient emotion. This clarity enables choices aligned with long-term goals rather than immediate impulses, reducing regret and enhancing effectiveness in both personal and professional realms. The practice of responding thoughtfully requires consistency. Each moment of reflection builds skill, reinforces discipline, and strengthens self-mastery. Awareness of emotional impulses, intentional observation, and deliberate formulation of responses becomes second nature. As this habit solidifies, reactions become increasingly deliberate, constructive, and aligned with values, fostering a sense of control, confidence, and resilience. Ultimately, responding thoughtfully rather than emotionally transforms interactions, decisions, and internal experience. Emotional impulses remain present, but they no longer dictate action. Composure replaces reactivity, clarity replaces confusion, and intentionality replaces chaos. Life becomes navigable with steadiness, insight, and deliberate influence over circumstances. Every challenge, provocation, or unexpected situation becomes an opportunity to exercise discernment, strengthen character, and act with integrity. Through the consistent practice of responding thoughtfully, emotional turbulence is diminished, relationships are improved, and personal growth is accelerated. Energy once lost to reactive cycles is redirected toward meaningful engagement, problem-solving, and purposeful action. By mastering the ability to respond rather than react, life is approached with clarity, composure, and empowered intentionality, transforming daily interactions into a testament to self-mastery and wisdom. Number 8. Practice compassion in tough conversations. Difficult conversations are an unavoidable part of life. Whether addressing conflict at work, confronting a friend or family member, or navigating sensitive personal matters, these discussions often evoke tension, defensiveness, and emotional discomfort. Many people approach such conversations with anxiety, fear of confrontation, or a desire to win the exchange. However, entering these moments with compassion transforms the interaction from a battlefield into an opportunity, understanding, connection, and resolution. Compassion in tough conversations is not about ignoring the truth or tolerating harmful behavior. It is about approaching dialogue with respect, empathy, and awareness, allowing both parties to engage productively and authentically. The foundation of compassionate communication is empathy. It begins with recognizing that every individual has their own experiences, pressures, and emotional landscapes that shape behavior. When confronted with challenging words or actions, consider what circumstances might have led to this moment. Perhaps stress, past wounds, or personal insecurities are influencing how the other person expresses themselves. By acknowledging their humanity, you prevent the conversation from devolving into accusation and defensiveness. Compassion allows you to see beyond the surface of conflict and connect with the underlying needs or fears driving behavior. Active listening is essential in practicing compassion. Too often, people enter tough conversations ready to respond, counter, or defend, rather than genuinely understanding the other person's perspective. By focusing fully on what is being said without interruption or preconception, you gain clarity on the intentions, concerns, and emotions behind the words. This deep attentiveness signals respect and opens the door to collaboration rather than confrontation. Listening with the intent to understand rather than reply shifts the dynamic of the conversation and reduces tension for both parties. Language matters greatly in compassionate dialogue. Choosing words carefully ensures that your message is clear without being inflammatory. Avoid accusatory phrases such as "you always" or "you never," which provoke defensiveness and escalate conflict. Instead, use neutral, descriptive language that communicates your feelings, needs, or observations without assigning blame. For example, expressing "I feel concerned when deadlines are missed because it affects the project" invites discussion rather than triggering an emotional reaction. Words delivered with calmness and intention act as bridges for understanding, rather than walls of conflict. Emotional regulation is another critical component. Tough conversations can evoke strong feelings of anger, frustration, or fear. Compassion does not require suppressing these emotions, but it does involve managing them so that they do not dictate your responses. Techniques such as mindful breathing, grounding in the present moment, and internal self-talk reinforce composure. By maintaining a calm and centered presence, you model emotional intelligence and create a safe environment for honest and productive dialogue. Emotional regulation transforms potentially adversarial encounters into opportunities for connection and problem solving. Compassion also includes understanding your own intentions before entering a conversation. Ask yourself, what is my goal here? Am I seeking to be heard, to resolve an issue, or to blame? Clarifying your purpose ensures that your approach is guided by constructive objectives rather than reactive impulses. Entering dialogue with deliberate intention prevents the conversation from being derailed by defensiveness or ego-driven responses. Compassionate engagement requires prioritizing understanding and resolution over proving a point or asserting dominance. Perspective taking is central to this practice. Recognize that your perception is limited to your experiences and interpretations, while the other person brings a unique lens to the situation. Considering their viewpoint allows you to respond thoughtfully, even when you disagree. You might discover common ground, identify misunderstandings, or uncover factors that were previously invisible. Compassionate conversations thrive when both parties feel heard, validated, and respected. Perspective taking is the key to creating this dynamic. Timing and pacing are important elements. Tough conversations are not won by speed or volume. They are guided by patience and attentiveness. Pause when necessary to collect your thoughts. Ensure clarity or manage emotional responses. Silence is not weakness. It is an essential tool for reflection and intentional communication. By pacing the conversation, you allow yourself and the other person to engage fully without being overwhelmed by intensity or emotion. Compassionate dialogue moves at a rhythm that encourages mutual understanding rather than escalation. Nonverbal communication plays a subtle but powerful role in conveying compassion. Tone of voice, facial expressions, and body posture communicate emotional cues beyond words. Approaching someone with open posture, steady eye contact, and calm articulation signals attentiveness and respect. Nonverbal cues reinforce the sincerity of your words and reduce the likelihood of misinterpretation. In difficult discussions, a composed presence can neutralize tension and demonstrate that engagement is rooted in understanding rather than conflict. Compassionate communication is strengthened by curiosity. Asking open-ended questions encourages the other person to share insights, feelings, or context that might otherwise remain unspoken. Phrases such as "Can you help me understand your perspective?" or "What led you to this decision?" foster dialogue and create opportunities for mutual insight. Curiosity shifts the focus from judgment to exploration, allowing the conversation to move toward resolution rather than entrenchment. When curiosity guides conversation, compassion naturally follows, creating a fertile ground for understanding. Acknowledging emotions without judgment is essential. Both your emotions and those of the other person are valid and worthy of recognition. Compassion involves naming feelings, expressing them constructively, and allowing space for the other person to do the same. By validating emotions without assigning blame, you reduce defensiveness, encourage openness, and foster authentic engagement. Emotional acknowledgement creates a safe environment where both parties can address challenges honestly and work toward resolution. Practical preparation enhances effectiveness. Before entering a difficult conversation, reflect on the key points, desired outcomes, and potential challenges. Anticipate emotional triggers and plan strategies to manage them. This preparation strengthens composure, ensures clarity of purpose, and reinforces the ability to engage with empathy and patience. Being intentional about your approach transforms potentially reactive situations into deliberate, compassionate interaction. The benefits of practicing compassion and tough conversations extend beyond the immediate discussion. Relationships are strengthened, trust is deepened, and conflict is resolved more effectively. Individuals gain confidence in addressing challenging topics without fear of escalation or misunderstanding. Compassion fosters collaboration, problem-solving, and mutual respect, creating long-term positive effects on personal, professional, and social interaction. Ultimately, practicing compassion in tough conversations is a skill that combines awareness, empathy, emotional regulation, and intentional communication. It requires observing triggers, regulating responses, considering perspectives, and engaging with curiosity and respect. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to model understanding, build trust, and navigate challenges with clarity and grace. Compassion transforms difficult exchanges into meaningful dialogues, cultivating stronger relationships, deeper insight, and personal growth. Consistently applying this principle reshapes how life's most challenging interactions are experienced. What once may have been approached with fear, tension, or defensiveness becomes an opportunity for connection, insight, and resolution. Compassion does not remove difficulty, but it transforms engagement into a deliberate, thoughtful, and emotionally intelligent process. By practicing compassion in every tough conversation, life becomes less reactive, more purposeful, and richer in understanding and meaningful human connection.
Number 9.
Detach from unhelpful external opinions. In a world saturated with voices, advice, and judgments, the opinions of others often arrive uninvited, shaping perception, influencing decisions, and clouding clarity. Colleagues critique choices. Acquaintances offer unsolicited advice. Social media broadcasts, evaluations, and even well-meaning friends express judgments that can feel intrusive. While feedback and perspective can be valuable, not all external opinions serve constructive purposes. Some are rooted in misunderstanding, bias, insecurity, or self-interest. Detaching from unhelpful external opinions is a discipline that safeguards mental clarity, strengthens self-trust, and preserves focus on personal priorities. It does not entail arrogance or isolation. It is an intentional cultivation of discernment and emotional independence. The first step in detachment is awareness. Recognize when external input triggers emotional responses, frustration, doubt, anger, or anxiety. These reactions are signals that the opinion is affecting you, whether deservedly or not. Pause and evaluate. Is this perspective aligned with your values, knowledge, or goals? Or is it a distraction from your own understanding and objectives? This assessment creates the mental space necessary to separate external commentary from internal truth, allowing you to maintain composure and intentionality. Understanding the source of opinions is equally important. Opinions are shaped by individual experiences, biases, and limitations. Just because someone asserts an idea does not make it inherently accurate or relevant to your circumstances. Some opinions reflect projection, insecurity, or a need to control rather than offer guidance. Recognizing the origin of external judgments helps prevent automatic acceptance and protects against unnecessary emotional disruption. Detachment is not indifference. It is clarity in distinguishing between valuable insight and irrelevant noise. Developing self-trust is central to this practice. Confidence in your judgment, values, and intuition forms the foundation for detachment. When you are anchored in self-awareness and grounded in purpose, external opinions lose their power to destabilize. Every choice, decision, or action is filtered through your own discernment, rather than being reactive to what others think. Cultivating this internal authority requires reflection, consistent evaluation of past experiences, and reinforcement of personal standards. Self-trust allows engagement with external viewpoints selectively, appreciating useful perspectives without being controlled by them. Mindfulness enhances the ability to detach, observing thoughts, emotions, and impulses as they arise without immediate reaction creates a buffer between stimulus and response. When confronted with an unhelpful opinion, notice the initial urge to defend, justify, or internalize it. Label it as a passing thought or external input rather than a directive. This practice creates emotional distance, preventing reactive acceptance or rejection, and enabling a measured, intentional response. Detachment grows stronger each time awareness precedes reaction. Selective engagement is practical and necessary. Not all feedback or perspectives are irrelevant. Some offer insights that expand understanding or highlight blind spots. Detachment does not preclude listening. It encourages discernment. Evaluate whether the opinion aligns with your goals, knowledge, and values before deciding whether to act, reflect, or disregard it. This approach prevents unnecessary distraction and conserves energy while still remaining open to meaningful guidance. Boundaries reinforce detachment. Clearly define whose opinions you allow to influence decisions and which topics are open for input. Family, mentors, and trusted colleagues may offer valuable insight, while random commentary from acquaintances, strangers, or social media often lacks context or constructive purpose. Establishing these boundaries reduces susceptibility to manipulation, pressure, or unnecessary doubt, enabling focused, intentional action guided by internal clarity. Detachment also involves reframing the emotional significance of opinions. External judgments often carry implicit power because they are interpreted as threats to reputation, acceptance, or self-worth. Recognize that your value, capability, and identity are not contingent on approval or evaluation from others. Separating emotional response from external input diminishes anxiety, frustration, and defensiveness, fostering resilience and confidence. The mind becomes a stable ground upon which thoughtful choices are made rather than a reactive surface buffeted by the opinions of others. Practicing detachment encourages a focus on internal standards rather than external validation. Decisions and actions are assessed against personal principles, long-term objectives, and practical outcomes rather than the fluctuating judgments of others. This approach strengthens self-reliance, reinforces discipline, and reduces vulnerability to manipulation or peer pressure. By prioritizing internal clarity over external approval, the mind is free to pursue meaningful goals without distraction. Social media, news, and public forums present particular challenges. Opinions are constantly broadcast, often with intensity, criticism, or judgment. Engaging emotionally with every external voice is exhausting and counterproductive. Detachment in this context involves curating exposure, limiting consumption, and applying critical thinking to assess relevance and credibility. Recognizing that much external commentary reflects projection, bias, or incomplete understanding preserves energy and focus for constructive endeavors. Detachment does not eliminate discernment. Feedback, criticism, and differing perspectives still offer opportunities for growth if approached thoughtfully. The key is evaluating relevance and constructive potential. Ask, does this information improve my understanding, refine my approach, or support my objectives? If not, it is safely set aside. By filtering external input in this manner, you maintain mental clarity, emotional stability, and productive focus. Daily practice reinforces detachment. Begin by noting moments when external opinions provoke emotional reactions or self-doubt. Reflect on whether the perspective is relevant, constructive, and aligned with your goals. Gradually, this process trains the mind to automatically assess external input, reducing susceptibility to unnecessary influence. The more consistently detachment is practiced, the more instinctive it becomes, creating a stable foundation for confident decision-making. Detachment strengthens personal growth. When energy is no longer diverted to internalizing unhelpful opinions, focus shifts toward meaningful action, skill development, and intentional decision-making. Mental clarity improves, emotional resilience grows, and self-directed progress accelerates. Life becomes navigable with less distraction and fewer reactive detours, allowing consistent advancement toward long-term objectives and fulfillment. Relationships also benefit. Detachment from unhelpful opinions does not equate to disengagement or arrogance. Instead, it fosters authenticity and clarity. Interactions are guided by understanding, principle, and intentionality rather than reactive compliance or defensiveness. People recognize steadiness and confidence, which encourages respect, trust, and more meaningful collaboration. Conversations become productive because they are rooted in clarity and purpose, rather than influenced by unnecessary emotional turbulence. Ultimately, detaching from unhelpful external opinions is a practice of liberation. It preserves mental energy, strengthens self-trust, and maintains focus on what truly matters. By consciously observing, filtering, and disengaging from irrelevant or counterproductive input, you gain freedom to act according to values, knowledge, and purpose. Each moment of detachment reinforces clarity, emotional stability, and resilience, creating a mental environment where thoughtful action replaces reaction, understanding replaces confusion, and inner strength guides every decision. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional when this principle is applied consistently. External opinions, once sources of distraction and self-doubt, are reframed as optional input rather than imperatives. Energy is conserved, focus is sharpened, and growth is prioritized over approval. Detachment cultivates mental sovereignty, empowering the individual to navigate life with clarity, confidence, and purpose-purple engagement. By mastering this discipline, the mind is liberated from the sway of unhelpful commentary, creating the conditions for sustained personal development, meaningful achievement, and enduring inner peace. Number 10. Recenter focus on inner truth. In the swirl of daily life, external influences constantly pull attention outward. Opinions, expectations, social comparisons, and unforeseen challenges bombard the mind, creating a sense of imbalance or disorientation. When attention is scattered across external pressures, judgment can be clouded, priorities become distorted, and emotional stability wavers. Recenter focus on inner truth is the practice of returning consistently to one's core values, principles, and authentic self. It is a conscious decision to anchor perception, decisions, and actions in what is real, meaningful, and enduring rather than being led by fleeting circumstances or external validation. The first step toward this practice is awareness of distraction. Recognize moments when attention drifts toward opinions, fears, or external pressures that do not serve your well-being or objectives. These distractions often manifest subtly: a lingering concern about approval, an unnecessary comparison to others, or a preoccupation with outcomes outside your control. By noticing these tendencies, the mind begins to differentiate between external noise and internal guidance, creating the foundation for recentering on truth. Understanding the essence of inner truth is critical. Inner truth encompasses values, principles, passions, and the deeper awareness of one's identity. It is not determined by others' perceptions, societal trends, or momentary emotion. This truth provides clarity in decision-making, steadiness in adversity, and alignment in action. When the mind is connected to this internal compass, choices are deliberate, energy is focused, and reactions are grounded rather than reactive. It acts as an anchor amidst the turbulence of external influence. Mindfulness cultivates access to inner truth. By observing thoughts and emotions as transient events rather than commands or facts, the mind separates from external influence and habitual reaction. Breath, body awareness, and present moment attention act as tools to return focus inward. Mindful reflection on personal values, principles, and long-term goals strengthens the connection to what is authentic. This internal alignment reduces susceptibility to external distraction and enhances resilience when confronted with conflicting perspectives or challenging circumstances. Self-reflection is a practical tool for recentering. Regularly examine choices, actions, and motivations against core beliefs. Ask, is this action aligned with my values, or am I responding to my own principles or reacting to external pressures? This examination fosters insight, revealing where attention has drifted and providing an opportunity to recalibrate. Journaling, contemplative thought, or quiet meditation can enhance this reflective process, making inner truth more tangible and accessible in daily decision-making. Recenter focus on inner truth also requires emotional regulation. External events and opinions can provoke fear, doubt, or anger, diverting energy and attention. Recognizing these emotional currents as temporary and external allows the mind to maintain steadiness. Techniques such as deep breathing, grounding in the present, or mentally observing emotions without attachment reinforce control over reactions. Emotional clarity strengthens the connection to inner truth, ensuring decisions and responses are aligned with long-term principles rather than transient impulses. Clarity emerges when external comparison is minimized. Societal standards, peer accomplishments, or social media portrayals often distort perception and create unnecessary pressure. Returning attention to internal standards rather than outward benchmarks prevents distraction, envy, or reactive behavior. Focusing on personal growth, authentic goals, and intrinsic values allows actions to be measured by one's own criteria, promoting satisfaction, alignment, and purposeful engagement. Decision-making improves when centered on inner truth. Choices grounded in authenticity are deliberate rather than reactive, coherent rather than fragmented. The mind evaluates options through the lens of principles and priorities, reducing susceptibility to manipulation, bias, or external influence. This approach strengthens confidence in actions and outcomes, as decisions are consistent with long-term vision and personal integrity, rather than driven by transient external pressures. Practical exercises support the practice of recentering. Begin the day with intentional reflection, identifying key values, priorities, and guiding principles. Use these as a framework for evaluating decisions, interactions, and challenges. Periodically pause throughout the day to reassess alignment, particularly during stressful or distracting moments. Visualization techniques, where you imagine yourself acting in accordance with your core truths, reinforce mental pathways for authentic behavior under pressure. Boundaries reinforce the focus on inner truth. Protecting time, attention, and energy from external pressures ensures that external noise does not overshadow authentic guidance. Limiting exposure to unhelpful commentary, unnecessary criticism, or distracting environments preserves clarity and strengthens resilience. Detachment from external influence is not isolation. It is creating mental space to engage with the world from a foundation of authenticity and intentionality. Connection to inner truth also nurtures resilience. Challenges, setbacks, and criticism are inevitable, but when anchored in principles and self-awareness, these obstacles are evaluated with perspective rather than panic. Inner truth provides a stable reference point amidst uncertainty, guiding responses, sustaining motivation, and preventing overreaction. Resilience grows because decisions are not contingent on external validation or temporary circumstances, but on enduring understanding of self and purpose. Compassion for self and others is strengthened through alignment with inner truth. By clarifying priorities and values, interactions are guided by principle rather than emotion or reaction. Empathy and understanding arise naturally because engagement is not dominated by defensiveness or insecurity. Compassion becomes actionable, informed by clarity and grounded in the balance between authenticity and connection. Daily life benefits, tangibly from consistent recentering. Work, relationships, and personal endeavors are approached with focus and intentionality. Distractions lose power, impulsive reactions diminish, and decision-making improves. Energy is directed toward meaningful action, rather than dissipated by reactive responses. Alignment with inner truth transforms experiences, creating coherence between thought, word, and deed, reinforcing integrity, personal growth, and purpose. Ultimately, recentering on inner truth is an act of liberation. It frees the mind from external influence, emotional turbulence, and the compulsion to conform. Life is approached with clarity, authenticity, and deliberate focus. Each moment becomes an opportunity to act in alignment with values, respond with intention, and maintain composure, regardless of circumstance. The practice creates stability within uncertainty, guiding behavior from a foundation of self-awareness rather than external dictate. Consistency strengthens this discipline. Each time focus returns to internal truth, the connection grows, and distractions lose their sway. Over time, acting from principle becomes instinctive, creating a life guided by deliberate choice rather than reaction. The mind becomes a calm and steady instrument, navigating challenges, relationships, and decisions with coherence, integrity, and purpose. Recentered focus transforms perception and experience. External chaos becomes less threatening. Criticism is evaluated objectively, and opportunities are recognized clearly. Emotional energy is preserved for intentional action. Relationships are engaged with authenticity, and personal goals are pursued with clarity. Inner truth becomes the anchor, compass, and guide, ensuring that life is lived according to principles, wisdom, and enduring purpose. By consistently prioritizing inner truth over external distraction, the mind cultivates resilience, clarity, and authenticity. Life shifts from reactive chaos to intentional action, from confusion to insight, and from dependence on external validation to self-empowered engagement. The practice of recentering is a daily commitment to integrity, clarity, and alignment, creating a foundation for meaningful living and enduring personal mastery.